Topic of our Dhamma talk this evening is one wishing to attain that state of peace should act thus. And this Dhamma talk nicely connects to what Jim had in mind this morning when he asked about whether one should on occasion also be mindful of the mental attitude with which one observes an object. So we will look at various ways of or various qualities that we should cherish in our meditation practice when observing predominant objects. Those 14 qualities are given in the English language as follows. One, skilled in good, wishing to attain that state of peace should act thus. He or she should be able, should be straight, should be upright, obedient, gentle, and humble. One should be content, easy to support, with few duties, living lightly, controlled in senses, discreet, not impudent, unattached to families. Now, what we shall do is explain these 14 qualities one by one. One should be able. The Pali adjective that corresponds to this is sakka, and it might also mean possible. Now, able to do what? Able to practice virtue. Now, it seems that the commentary has further clarified this by saying ability here with regard to the practice in virtue or sila means that one must have some faith that such practice is beneficial. One must have faith in the fact that a careful observance of the precepts will lead to a state of non-remorse. Otherwise, if that understanding is not there, then one wouldn't want to practice sila. Secondly, one needs to be healthy. And if we are seriously sick, we can barely move, then it will be much more difficult to practice sila. Now, one discourse has specified further what it means to be healthy. Now, if one can still eat food and digest the food, then one is considered to be healthy. Also, as a requirement to practice sila, one needs to have some courage, or one should not be lazy. if there is some amount of laziness, then one may not be willing to make that extra effort to observe the precepts. So let's say you are it's 5 o'clock p.m., 6, 7 o'clock p.m. You feel somewhat hungry because you're used to that third meal in the day, and because you've taken the precepts, you're not supposed to take that last meal. Now, if you were to have no energy, then probably you would easily give in and go and grab something to eat. Now, the fourth prerequisite that the commentary mentions is that one needs to possess some intelligence. So observing the precepts meticulously is not always easy. When it comes to observing right speech, sometimes we might find ourselves in a situation where we would be tempted to maybe speak a white lie just to please the other person. And that is not what the Buddha had in mind. And so in a situation like this, where one does not want to say a lie, then one might consider to remain silent. The Buddha on several occasions responded in this way. Now, if one possesses these four qualities, then one is certainly considered to be able to practice sila. The second quality that our discourse certainly recommends is that of uju. And uju is an adjective in the Pali scriptural language meaning straight, honest, upright, or straightforward. So what this then means is that one needs honesty to practice sila. Now, there is a mental factor, namely a wholesome mental factor that corresponds to this, that reflects this, and this is known as ujukata in the Pali scriptural language. Rectitude is its English term. Now, rectitude corresponds to straightness, and this twofold rectitude, namely of consciousness and the body of mental factors, has the characteristic of uprightness. And its function is certainly to crush the trickiness of the mind and of the mental body and certain consciousness. And its manifestation is as non-crookedness. its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness, and it should be regarded as opposed to hypocrisy and fraudulence, which may create crookedness in the mental body and consciousness. So this ujjukata is a mental factor that is associated with all pure consciousness. So when we practice sila, then we need a maximum of this honesty. Now, one does not, for the most part, have perfect sila right away. Now, this is a matter of development. And as one's mindfulness grows, gradually one then becomes more, or one learns to more refine one's virtue. Now, closely related to this second quality is the third one, which in Pali is given as suju. And suju is a combination of su and uju in Pali. And this too means upright, or one could say it means perfectly upright, very upright. So when one practices the Dhamma, one needs lots of honesty. Now, why is this? Because there are those who do not reveal the truth to their teachers. There are people who are not always upright, and they then are not ready for the practice of the wise. If a meditator does not report the truth to a meditation teacher, then it will be difficult for the teacher to assess the meditator's practice and to give proper advice. Such a meditator may easily slip off the correct path. Therefore, the Buddha stressed these two qualities of ujju and suju. Now, to give you a very practical example for this, during the interview, a meditation teacher might ask a retreatant, well, was it easy for you to observe the rising and falling movement of the abdomen in a continuous manner without thinking? And then, without much thought, the retreatant then replies, yes, no problem whatsoever. I could stay with the rise and fall for 5-10 minutes in a row. Not the not the slightest thought arose in the stream of consciousness. Now, this is rather unlikely to happen. So to observe the rising and falling movement of the abdomen for a total of 10 minutes without a single thought arising is close to impossible. And there is Dhammapada verse number 35, which starts at Dunigahasa, and then goes on, and it means it is difficult to control the mind. For an uncontrolled mind easily or swiftly goes and lands wherever it pleases. So reality is such that even within just 1 minute, or sometimes even within less than this, the mind goes off it, goes into wondering or thinking. So if we are experiencing quite some substantial wandering mind, then we simply have to stick to the truth and acknowledge this. Now, in this certain context, the Venerable Sayadaw Sasana, a Burmese meditation teacher and disciple of the Venerable Sayadaw Pandita Bhiwamsa, has given the following illustration or simile, namely that of an outstanding artist. If an outstanding artist using excellent paints happens to do a painting on a dirty canvas, it goes without saying that the outcome of his artistic work will be mediocre. The same thing goes for meditators. If a retreatant is not honest, then the outcome of his or her meditation practice is likely to be also mediocre. Now, when our outstanding artist using first-class paints does a painting on a clean canvas, then the painting will most likely be very clear and impressive. The same thing then goes for our meditator's mind, which is pure, and practicing with such a pure mind, the result of the practice then will also be very clear. Now, to elaborate on this just a little bit more. See, the realization of the path and fruition of stream entry requires a substantial degree of purity, of mental purity. And if we, in the course of our meditation practice, don't manage to bring about more and more purity, then it will not suddenly be possible to gain that sudden supramundane state. And hence it is worth to pay close attention to establishing more and more purity from the very start of our practice. Now, one might want to argue, well, what if, owing to certain circumstances, I didn't have the good fortune of growing up with much purity? Does this then exclude a person from meditation practice? What do you think? No? And Jim?
It doesn't exclude him, it makes it more difficult.
So, indeed, it does not necessarily exclude a person. The main The point is that we are willing to work on this, on gaining more and more purity. If there is this certain volition, this intention, then gradually the purity will happen. Now, our sutta that speaks of those 14 qualities that are necessary to attain that state of peace, then mentions a quality that is given in the Pali scriptural language as suvacha. And this means what? Suvacha is an adjective, and this means? Well, it means obedient. And the noun in the Pali scriptural language for this is sovajasa, obedience. And so in our meditation practice, obedience is certainly said to be necessary. Now, obedience, especially in the Western or in the world of highly industrialized countries, and in particular in Western countries, is a quality that we might not be too familiar with, or a quality that we might not appreciate. We might even revolt against it. So if our parents tell us to do something, then we might do just the opposite. Or if our teachers at school tell us to perform, to, let's say, do certain type of homework, then we might not comply with it. Now, obedience, certainly in the context of the meditation practice, has its place. And the reason is certainly simply that the Buddha's understanding of the nature of the mind and his understanding of training the mind, developing the mind, was extremely profound, and therefore his teachings were useful, or therefore his teachings are worth to be followed. Now, obedience is certainly in the sense of accepting the teachings, in the sense of easily taking instructions, complying with those instructions. Now, if one faces some difficulty and in the meantime wants to have certain benefits, then one will approach a teacher. When the teacher gives certain instructions, then one will take the instructions easily. It is necessary to reveal one's own difficulties, and certainly then one will receive instructions from a teacher. Now, such a person should be as happy as if one were to hold a golden pot. Such a person is, according to the Buddha, very close to Nibbana. When a teacher wants the yogis to have benefits, and so the teacher then instructs a yogi, then one should have the desire to follow, to implement such instructions. Now, in this certain context, we have the story of the elder Sariputta and a 7-year-old Samanera. At one point, the elder Sariputta was wearing his robes in an somewhat sloppy manner, and they were not quite even all around. The young Samanera noticed this and then went up to Elder Sariputta and pointed this out to him. And the elder could have responded with anger, being upset, of being admonished by a young Samanera. However, the elder did not respond in this manner at all, but rather he thanked the novice and told him, "If again you see a fault in me, then please instruct me." So this is a good attitude to be followed by one who desires to attain that state of peace. Now, gentleness of the mind, malleability of the mind, pliability of the mind are a further quality that is needed for our meditation practice. This is known in the Pali scriptural language as muddu. And the corresponding mental state is mudutta in the Pali language. Its characteristic is that of the subsiding of rigidity in the mental body and consciousness, respectively. Its function is to crush rigidity. It is manifested as non-resistance, and its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. It should be regarded as opposed to such defilements as wrong views and conceit, which create rigidity. Now, the mind, or the Dhamma itself, is rather refined, and if a person's mind is tense or rigid or rough, then it will be difficult for the Dhamma to arise and for a person to understand the Dhamma. So this rigidity or tension of the mind then is opposite to the Dhamma. If we want to understand the Dhamma, find access to it, then the mind needs to be malleable, soft, and pliable. One needs, for this, faith and a wholesome intention. The mind, furthermore, needs to be sharp. And there needs to be a desire to practice. One needs to cherish the Dhamma. So these qualities will ensure that the mind becomes soft and malleable and gentle. Now, if we keep up our meditation practice, then gradually the mind will become softer and softer. if one can turn a chunk of iron ore into a thin blade of steel, then it must also be possible to transform the mind and to make it malleable and gentle so that one can then perceive the Dhamma. Anatimani is certainly yet another quality that the Buddha has recommended for the meditation practice. This certainly means one should be humble. Mana is certainly your pride or conceit. Ati-mana is your superiority conceit. Ati-mani means one who is proud. Anati-mani is certainly then the opposite of this, one who does not have this superiority conceit. Those who are very proud usually do not approach a wise certain person, especially if one is proud because of one's material wealth or social status or intelligence or whatever else it might be. Such people, because of their pride, then do not approach the wise and certainly will not be too interested in meditation practice. At the time of the Buddha, there were some Brahmins who had the fortune of meeting with the Buddha, and yet they were not able to gain the Dhamma. And this happened because of their pride. There were, however, some who managed to lower their pride and thus then were able to gain the Dhamma. Contentment is yet another quality that is very helpful in our meditation practice. Santusako is certainly the Pali term for this. One should be content and satisfied. Santuti is certainly your Pali noun for contentment. Now, as a meditator, during an intensive retreat, we want to be contented with what we receive in terms of food, accommodation, in terms of general facilities. And we don't want to be like ordinary people who follow fashions and certain trends. Sometimes what suddenly happens, there may be a certain fussiness. Let's say when one likes certain sweet, certain food, however, sour food gets, mostly sour food gets certain offered, then one will ask for sweet certain food. Now, especially in the Asian countries where the laity offers the food to the monasteries, to the meditators, one cannot ask for special types of food. And there it's important that one is easy to support, one is satisfied with whatever is being offered. And the type of attitude that works the best is it is quite enough if I achieve the Dhamma, and it doesn't really matter what kind of food I get to eat, as long as I have enough to maintain this body. That's enough. Meditators who think along this subtle line will easily perceive the Dhamma. So this certain quality of being easy to support, or easily supported in the Pali language, is known as subaro. Now, many years back at the Mahasi Center in Burma, in Yangon, the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw was approached and asked whether meditators should be sweeping the grounds or not, because some meditators were actually doing this. And the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw then instructed or recommended that meditators keep their work or their duties to an absolute minimum, just focusing on being mindful all day long, except for ensuring that their quarters are kept clean, as well as the bathrooms. Now, here we have not that many volunteers who will keep the place clean, and thus it is necessary that meditators also help performing certain chores during a limited period of the day. And this is fine, but we try to perform these chores with some amount of mindfulness. Now, this the Buddha expressed as having few duties, apakicca, in the Pali scriptural language. Apa means small or little or insignificant, and kicca is certainly your duty or work or chore. Now, if we were to busy ourselves unnecessarily again and again, then this will easily interrupt our concentration samadhi. When we come on a retreat, we bring just a minimum of things along in terms of clothing and in terms of essential medicine and toiletry articles, and that's it. we try to keep our material things to absolute minimum. The reason being is if we were to bring many things along, then we have to spend a lot of time housekeeping, repairing our belongings. And this then too will take us away from the practice. Now, these days, on occasion, meditators bring their computers along, and certainly then maybe thinking, on occasion I might certainly make use of this certain computer. And this is not to be recommended at all. So when you're here, then kindly be totally focused on your meditation practice, and don't spend time on your computer, since this is likely to distract you. Now, restraint of the senses is a quality that the Buddha has spoken about, known in the Pali scriptural language as Indriya Samvara Sila. Now, in the context of our sutta, here it is referred to as Sant Indriyo, which is a Pali term that consists of two parts, namely Santa and Indriya. Santa meaning calmed, tranquil, peaceful, pure, and Indriya are your senses. So, what we have here is a person whose senses are tranquil, one who is controlled in the senses or with senses calmed. Now, when we meditate intensively, then we want to do so. We want to perform all activities in a calm and restrained manner. So when we when we walk to a certain place, we want to do so calmly in a restrained manner. When we eat, we want to do so in a calm and restrained manner. And then also the same goes for other activities. The next quality that the Buddha mentioned for one who wishes to attain that certain state of peace is given as nipako, which means one should be discreet or wise or prudent. And when we perform activities, then we want to act with circumspection. We want to make sure that wisdom is included. The Visuddhimagga explains this as protective understanding, or as the wisdom that guides all affairs. In other words, it's a pragmatic type of wisdom that takes the lead in all tasks. So in our on retreat, during our meditation practice, if we are to do something unusual, we're just about to do something unusual, then we might first check with prudence whether this would be proper or not. Also, when we see or hear or smell or come across various formations, then we want to be mindful of these phenomena or we want to deal with these certain phenomena in a profound manner, not in a shallow manner. And doing this then will help to develop our insight knowledge. So when we observe a predominant object carefully, then gradually we might come to see its different qualities, and then we might understand that or its impermanent nature, and also its unsatisfactory quality or its lack of a self. Now, in the world it is certainly good to have some self-assurance, but if there's too much of it, then this certainly might not necessarily be so useful. The Buddha has spoken of apagabo, which means one should not be presumptuously confident and self-assured. So if one were to exhibit much boldness and a lack of shame, being brazen, audacious, rough in speech and certain behavior, then it will be difficult to gain the Dhamma. The Dhamma is rather gained by those who possess a mentality that is soft and certainly clean. Hence, one needs to cultivate one's physical and certain verbal and mental behavior. The last quality that the Buddha mentioned is certainly given as kulesu ananugito, meaning one should not be greedily attached to families. Now, when going on a retreat or on a retreat, we might need certain things, and we might then want to get these certain things through the help of others, and then we might intentionally try to get very close to another person, even attached to another person. So this then is done not with a pure intention, but rather with the selfish interest. And this the Buddha did not recommend whatsoever. Now, when we practice, we don't want to get too close to others. We just want to do our own meditation practice. Though though we practice in a group, yet each and every one of us will do so by ourselves. Now, instead of getting very much attached to others, the Buddha recommended Kaya Viveka, which is seclusion of the body, namely meaning bodily detachment, being being separate from others, living in solitude, staying alone. The second form of seclusion is that of Chitta Viveka, which is seclusion of the mind. And here this certainly means the mind is detached from the 5 hindrances. Now, the third kind of seclusion that certainly the Buddha spoke of is known as Upadhi Viveka, and certainly this then refers to Nibbana. Now, if really we need a companion, then we should make the Dhamma to be our best companion. And certainly if we take the Dhamma as our best companion, then we will surely we will surely always have some very good support. Now, a person who possesses these 14 qualities is said to attain that state of peace. The state of peace is the state of Nibbana. These 14 qualities are taken from a discourse that is well known, namely the Metta Karaniya Metta Sutta, so the discourse on loving kindness. The relevant 2 paragraphs in the Pali scriptural language are as follows: Karaniyam atakusalena yam tam santam padam abhisamecha sakko ujucha suujucha suachocha samudunati mani santusakocha subarocha appakichocha saloka wuti santindariyocha nipakocha appagabo kuliswa nanukido. With these certain words in Pali, allow me to conclude this talk, wishing that may you embrace these certain 14 qualities, and certainly then may they become part of your practice, and certainly may they greatly contribute to an attaining of that state of peace, hopefully within this very retreat here in Taos, New Mexico. And this is it. Do you have any questions? Okay, if not, then we'll end.